Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. So engagers, once again, welcome to our weekly Professor Game podcast. And today we have Joel. But before we get started, Joel, are you prepared to engage?
Make it so, number one.
Because Joel Comm is an entrepreneur, New York Times bestselling author, and new media innovator. He is also an expert on harnessing the power of social media and mobile applications to expand your brand's reach and engage in active relationship marketing. And Joel is a sought-after public speaker who leaves his audience inspired, entertained, and armed with strategic tools to create a new media campaign that will explode their business. And he is also the author of several books, and he has something called the Fun Formula, which we'll also be talking about today. But Joel, is there anything that you feel that we're missing from this intro?
Well, just that I'm also 12 years old. Well, at least on the inside. I don't look like it, but I'm eternally young. I like to play. That's why, even the title of your show, Professor Game, caught my attention. I'm, 55 years old if you go chronologically, but I still play computer games just about every day that I'm home. So very youthful and love to play.
Fantastic. That's exactly what we're looking after. And Joel, we always like to know a little bit more about our guests. So we would like to know, the typical question is, what does a day look like? But I know it's not only days. So we want to know, what is, a day, a week. What does it feel like to be Joel in a day like today?
Every day is different, and that's the way I like it. I left the workforce, as it were, decades ago, and haven't had a job ever since. I enjoy keeping my life spontaneous, unique. I don't like repetitive type of tasks and scheduling. So I don't know what the 9 to 5 is. To me, you're never going to hear me say, oh no, I've got a case of the Mondays, or yay, it's hump day on Wednesday, or thank God it's Friday. Because every day is the same in terms of, doesn't matter what day of the week it is. Maybe I'm working, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm traveling, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm speaking somewhere, maybe I'm not. And I don't go by the calendar that the rest of the working world does. And I love that level of freedom. It's served me well for decades now, and so I'm not going to quit.
Great. That's the only job you will not quit, so I love it.
Right. True.
So Joel, is there a story that you can tell us of a time when, you had one of these that we call first attempts in learning, but, in plain language, it's a fail? One of those moments where you had a lot of learning from that we can also, of course, hear that story. You don't have to name any names when, especially when using all this fun, maybe even the fun formula or something similar that you think that we could relate to, that maybe we can draw some lessons from.
Yeah, well, I think, the failures, there's far more of those than the successes. Everybody loves to talk about the successes and try to present themselves as, something to be modeled after. But I have way more failures than successes, and I consider those more worthy to be modeled after, because failure is where you really learn the most. And one of my biggest failures that I love to brag about is around 2009, I went down, I made a couple bad hires for my company, and I was too hands off, and we went down the process of building a system that my heart really wasn't in it, but I thought it was cool and I thought I could make money. And it was one of the earliest mobile marketing autoresponders. So when we think of autoresponders, we think of Constant Contact, Get Response, MailChimp. This was an autoresponder for mobile phones where you would build your list of phone numbers. And we were very early to the game. It was a great product. product. I spent a lot of time and money, a solid 6 figures, working on it, and it never went anywhere. And I tried, to cut a long story short, after a few years of having invested into this and paying for it, to just shut it down would have been, in my mind, admitting massive failure and a waste of money. But one day I finally realized I'm spending money on this every month and it's not going anywhere, and I just bit the bullet and pulled the plug. But something really unexpected happened when I did that. Instead of feeling like a massive failure, instead I felt the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. And it's when I realized something that is just wonderfully profound and I carry forward in every venture that I do right now. I stopped paying for my mistake, and I stopped it being a failure the moment I stopped paying for it. When I released it, and it just became it was a write-off. It was a write-off financially. It was a write-off experientially, and it was actually an incredibly valuable write-off experientially. And so now I've understood, don't get, involved in things that you're really not all in. Don't become emotionally attached to a product or service, anything you're working on, because there's always more opportunity out there. There's so much opportunity. And if you only have this tunnel vision of seeing one way to do something, you're missing out on all that other opportunity.
Absolutely, and this relates pretty well to the topic that we always like to talk about in this podcast, and it's about iteration, pivoting, changing your mind, which is fine. I mean, you don't have to get married to an idea, to a solution, to anything that you're creating in any capacity. I mean, the idea is that you're creating new things, and some of them will, as you said, be a failure. And the moment you let go of them is that moment when, you're opening yourself up for future successes of any other kind. Again, it could be in a project you're working on and what you're doing is not working. It could be because you had this idea, as Joel had, and it was just not working, and you let it go and you open yourself to that success that you were actually after in the first time that you went into this. So I love that story, and I think there is a key lesson there of that feeling of all that weight in your shoulders. I think is very very graphic of what it probably feels like in that sense. And of course, it not only applies to big entrepreneurial projects you might be paying big bucks on. That could be emotionally as well. That is on the time you're spending. There's so many ways in which there's a huge weight that can be on you. So thank you for that story. Is there anything that you would say is the key lesson from this? Like, what would you say, maybe approach differently, maybe quit sooner? Like, what would you say is something that you took away from that?
Yeah, I don't want to say quit sooner is necessarily, because there's some things you do need to see through to the end. But, to know if you're really connecting with what you're doing, is this really what I'm passionate about? I'm no longer money motivated, and it's not because I'm wealthy, because I'm not. I just understand that money doesn't bring ultimate satisfaction. It pays the bills and can allow you to do, have a certain lifestyle. But once you've got a certain amount, your lifestyle, at least my lifestyle, didn't change a whole lot once I was able to pay off credit cards or, be out of debt. It's not like I need fancy big houses or fancy cars. I mean, I drive a Mustang, and I'll probably own this car for years because I don't need a fancy car. I don't need to demonstrate anything to the world of, what my
take your Instagram picture right next to the golden vehicle.
To me, it reflects an immaturity, and that's fine. Some people are there. I'm older. I've been through it, and so what I've derived from all this is that the most important things in life aren't things; they're people and experiences. And so I am trying to carpe all the diems. As we're doing this interview here, the world is racked with grief for losing Kobe Bryant. So young. He's 41 years old, and his daughter at 13 years old, and there's this collective mourning that's taking place in our culture, and there's this awakening that happens when somebody who it doesn't seem, it's too soon for them to go. We all know people, family, friends, associates who have died younger than anybody would have thought they would. But there's something about it when it hits the society as a whole this collective of losing somebody young that makes everybody start reflecting again. And I think that reflection should take place every day. We shouldn't have to lose, a major celebrity for us to go carpe diem. Life is short. We're here for a time. We don't know how long we have. And where's your focus? Is it on money? Is it on things? Guess what? You don't get to take any of it with you. So what's the point?
There you go. That's a good philosophy to go by. So Joel, actually now we should make a quick shift. And instead of going for that failure from which we both learned a lot from, of course you learned a lot more because you lived it yourself. But I want to go for another story. And it's a story about actually a success. Of course, you went for something, you wanted to achieve it, and you actually managed to get there. What would you say is a story in that sense? And what did you learn from it? We want to be there in the ground level with you.
What's really interesting is when I reverse engineer my successes and failures, I realize that I couldn't have predicted the successes when they were happening. Because whenever you try to attempt something, your hope is always that, hey, we're going to win. This is going to work. And so many times it hasn't. And it's really hard to cherry pick ahead and go, well, this is going to work and this isn't. Because if this isn't, why am I bothering with it in the first place, right? So, but what I have learned is that those successes really came when I was following my own creativity and curiosity, when I was willing to take a risk, and when I trusted the process, when I allowed serendipity to take its course. In other words, it was always the least amount of effort that led to the greatest successes. This is kind of why I wrote my latest book, The Fun Formula, because I realized that it's not a fluke for me to succeed while I'm having the most fun. And I think for a lot of people, that's going to be the case, that this whole hustle and grind mentality is dangerous, not just in terms of whether or not you're going to succeed in your business, but in terms of your health and your relationships and your fulfillment in life. So, to point to something that I did that led to success, it's really challenging because I always had the same mindset going into those things. It's only in hindsight that we're able to go, oh, this is why this one hit and this is why this one didn't.
Yeah, of course, because always hindsight is 20/20. But can you? I don't know if there's a time that you remember, or maybe one of the stories from that led to your book. I don't know, something of that sort, where you say, well, looking back, I think this is what happened, and it had a lot to do, probably, as you were saying, with having fun with what you were doing.
Well, I think, when we look at, for example, the iFart application, this is an application that we created in 2008, came out December of that year, when, very early to the App Store game. And it really just sprung from a team meeting where we were whiteboarding ideas for iPhone applications, and somebody said, hey, a digital fart machine would be hilarious, and we all cracked up. And I turned to my team and say, how long would it take to develop and design and bring this out? And they said 3 weeks. I said, oh, let's do it. Right? It was kind of on a whim. Let's do it. This sounds like fun. I never thought it would hit #1 in the App Store in the world. I never thought I would be on Jon Stewart's Daily Show or mentioned on the Today Show or written about in Rolling Stone or the New York Times Magazine. You don't think that way. That's just not. It sounded like fun. The price, the entry fee to do it seemed like okay, and let's give this a try. And then it just worked. All the pistons fired at the right time, the right messaging, the right reaction to, what happened in terms of publicity. And it continued to work, and it continues to work to this day. It still sells. Here we are 12 years later. And every day in the App Store, people still buy the iFart app. So
digital farts for everyone.
There's the key to success.
So digital farts might be pointed as part of the success.
Well, but only once.
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
That's because we had dozens, if not 100 or more, people tried to copy that. I'm like, oh, look what's selling. It's #1. I can make one of these, and they put them out, and of course, they all failed miserably.
Of course,
you don't win by being
copying.
A copycat. It's just not how it works.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I love that story because, of course, I was teasing by saying that that was the secret to success. But I do think that there was a key there that you led. I mean, it led you from your gut, your instinct in a way. And you also said, look, like even the worst thing happens. We had 3 weeks of having fun with this. We'll have an app that we can use. We'll have something that we can have fun with. And even if that's the result, that is something that is worthy of pursuing. I mean, for me, I can relate to this very much because I remember starting this podcast and saying, look, if the result of this is me having, interesting conversations with interesting people that I want to talk to anyways, and nobody listens to it, like it's literally one download and it's me and maybe two because the guest is listening to it, I'm fine with that. I mean, even if that's it and I'm having fun with this, great. And here we are 2 years later of 100 and something podcasts by now. I mean, the audience is growing. There's many opportunities coming down. And it all started with, a little bit of fun that I wanted to have, something that I wanted to make sure I had fun with. And, I can completely relate to your story in that sense as well. I didn't sell millions with a fart, but again, I think I can see where the fun is coming from as well.
Sure.
So, Joel, when you're thinking about creating these things and look, maybe even looking back, is there any some sort of, I don't know, process again for success and failure, like that because I know you said at the beginning that you don't like to have monotony or always be doing the same thing, but have you seen, again, probably in hindsight, is there something that you usually do, some sort of steps, process, systems that you use when you're creating your ideas and your apps and so on?
Yeah, well, that's what the fun formula is all about. Really, it is about what has my attention. What am I curious about? I kind of see myself as a guy with a pail and a shovel looking for a sandbox to play in. And when I see something that I think is interesting, I'll go, oh, let's see what we can build here. And sometimes I look at it and go, oh, well, yeah, that's not as cool or as exciting or as interesting as I thought it would. Sometimes I'll play with it for a little bit and go, oh, this is interesting, but I don't think I want to spend a lot of time with it. Other times I'll build some and go, wow, this is great fun. Let's do more. And you end up building a sandcastle there. And that's really how all of my successes have come about. And what ends up happening, especially when the latter case is proven true, is then people come to me and they admire this thing that I built and they go, how did you do that? And then I end up teaching. And that's when I end up speaking or writing books, creating content, writing for the various publications I write for online, making videos. It's because people want to know, how did you do that thing that you just did there? That's pretty cool. And so that is my process. It really is following my own curiosity, taking risks, and that means, having buy-in to the point where I understand this might fall flat on its face, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't make me a failure. It just means I found a way to not do something or not want to do it anymore. And then I think really essential is serendipity, is trusting the process. It's not about, busting your ass to get stuff done. It's about the right contact, the right person, the right time, the right email, going to the right event, asking the right questions. And there's a lot of times that, people try to force things through before it's time. You don't do that with a baby. It takes 9 months for a woman to be pregnant and give birth for, the optimal healthy child. And you can't go, okay, I've been pregnant for a month, I'm ready now. It doesn't work that way. And oftentimes people try to force their business in that same way. And it could be that it's not time. The right person who's going to help you succeed with that hasn't arrived yet. You're not emotionally ready yet to deal with the success of this. There's just so many reasons that the timing could not be right. And so we have to trust the process, that things happen when they're going to happen, which is why I try to go through life with open hands. Don't try to hold on to stuff and the need for it to go the way you want it to. I can't tell you how many times I've been disappointed in the past because, I'll have a deal and I'm like, oh, this deal is going to be awesome. This is going to happen. And then it falls through and then you're disappointed. Now, no deal is a deal until the deal is done. Or as I like to say, nothing is anything until it's something. So when I'm not going to get all excited about going to speak at this dream location, all right, or doing this joint venture with somebody just because there's an interest in it. I'll be excited when we're actually doing it, when it's actually happening. And that helps to alleviate a lot of the disappointment. When you release these expectations out into the world, some people say the universe. I like to refer to, as God, and saying, hey, whatever the plan is, I'm good with it unfolding how it unfolds. And that gives me a lot more peace, makes me a lot more present for the here and now, and a lot less disappointed.
And you're able to enjoy what's coming and what's here instead of mourn for what was not there. Definitely. Sure. I love that. Just a quick break before we continue with this episode. If you've been enjoying this podcast, I would really appreciate if you share it with your friends and family and on social media. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @RobAlvarezB and the hashtag ProfessorGame, all one word. And in Facebook, you can find the Professor Game page. Thanks in advance for your engagement. So Joel, what would you say is maybe, talking again about all this serendipity, all this, fun, all these things that we've been talking about, is there a best practice, I know there's no silver bullet, so we're not looking for that, but any, sort of quick advice that you say, well, consider this, maybe like what you were mentioning, like letting go, having open hands, maybe it could be that or something different that you would say is sort of a best practice to arrive to that fun formula for each person.
Sure. Yeah, and that it really comes down to the individual, but it is just do you. Stop listening to the messages that the world just throws at us in rapid fire succession of, who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to behave and what role we're supposed to play. The biggest world changers did not conform, right? If you want to do something epic, then you're going to be the one who's going to lead that. It's not going to come because some teacher said, well, here's how you do that, or some parent said this is what you should do and here's what you should go to school for, or some marketing message out there told you this is the type of woman you want, or the car that you should desire, or the lifestyle that you should have. You got to figure that out for yourself, and that takes really getting to know yourself, what you're really all about, what you really want, and where your greatest strengths and talents lie. Tune out all the rest of that garbage, because it's not that there's not good information out there. It's not that we can't learn from others. We should, but it should always be in the context of being our authentic selves. And I think that's probably the best advice I can give to anybody.
Absolutely. Being yourself, because everybody else is taken, right?
Absolutely. I have a t-shirt that says that. I love it.
There you go. And after we've spent around 20 minutes by now together and getting a bit of vibe of the podcast and what Professor Game could be about, do you have anybody that comes to your mind that you would like to listen to in an interview like this one in Professor Game?
Anybody that I would interview,
or that you would like to listen to in an interview like this one?
Usually the people that I interview myself, right? We're all the people that I want to talk to, that I find interesting and engaging, and there's so many. Less and less these days am I interested in talking about business. More and more am I interested in hearing the stories of individuals that are living out their own fun formula, that are just remarkable people doing remarkable things.
Very, very nice. I'm sure that is the case, and that you've had quite a few of those in your podcast as well.
Yeah.
And in that same sense of recommendations, what would you say if you were to recommend a book to this audience, to the engagers, people who are interested in fun, in games, and how to apply that to life? Is there any book that you would recommend, of course, right next to yours in our libraries?
Well, it's actually not a book about fun and games at all, but it's probably the most important book that I've read in terms of personal development, and something that's helped me in both my personal life and my business. And that book is called Boundaries. It's by Doctors Cloud and Townsend. And once you understand boundaries in your life, the world opens up to you in terms of being authentic and being healthy. And it's always the book that I recommend.
Beautiful book, I'm sure. I haven't read it, so I'll put it in my list, because it sounds very, very interesting to help us. That process of placing boundaries can be very difficult sometimes, but I'm guessing that once you understand why they're there, how they're going to help you move on with your life. I mean, they're going to be there to help you every time you need them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you say right now or in the past, historically, however you want to assume that, what would you say is your favorite game?
Are we talking like board game, or are we talking computer game?
Whichever you want, because you mentioned that you were playing video games almost every day that you're at home.
I gotta tell you, I've been playing computer and video games since the first games came out. Right. So we're talking about the console games back in the 80s. And I have never been so immersed and intrigued by the quality, the storytelling, and the gameplay in a game as I am Red Dead Redemption 2 by Rockstar Games. They're the guys that made the Grand Theft Auto series. I played it on my PS4, and then it came out for PC, and I'm currently going through it again on my PC. So immersive, such amazing storytelling, such great characters, fun, repeatable gameplay. Just a masterpiece.
Absolutely. In fact, I recently got it myself, and I'm going to start playing it very, very soon as I finish some of the other ones that I'm doing right now. So it is a fantastic game. I tested it out in a hotel. Maybe given your background as well, you might enjoy it. It's in Amsterdam, and it's called the Arcade Hotel. So you have a game room, and you have consoles in every one of the rooms for guests as well. Old ones like Nintendo, the NES, the Super NES, the first Xbox, all that kind of jazz. So you're entertained enough when you arrive to your room that you can go to sleep very, very easily as well.
Yeah.
So we're arriving to the end, but before we go, I would like to know if you consider that you have any sort of sweet spot, what we'd like to call a superpower when finding the fun, again, for you, maybe even helping other people. Do you have, that sweet spot? Where do you feel? What do we just say is that spot for you?
My sweet spot?
Yes.
My life feels like my sweet spot. I feel like I'm in it right now. I feel like I'm doing what I want to do. I'm living a lifestyle that makes me happy. I'm traveling and speaking and seeing the world and hanging out with cool people, doing cool things. Since every day is unique, I feel like I'm just in it right now. This is it's beautiful. Life is good.
Fantastic. That's great to know that you're in that sweet spot, living it right now. So Joel, again, thank you very much for being with us today. I don't want to let you go until you have, all of your cards on the table. I don't know if you want to lead us to your podcast, your webpage, wherever that is, if we can find you in the world of internet or otherwise. If you have any final piece of advice, please let us know before we say that it's game over for today.
Well, I think I've given you my best advice, so I'm not going to try and make up anything else. You can find me at joelcomm.com. I'm at joelcomm on all of the social medias, and look for the verified profile so you know it's not me and one of the fakers that's out there, because there's a lot of those. And my latest passion is cryptocurrency and blockchain. And about 2.5 years ago, I started a podcast with my friend Travis Wright called The Bad Crypto Podcast. It's infotainment. We teach people about the future of blockchain, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and digital money with a sense of humor. We've had over 8 million downloads of the show, over 400 episodes, and you can find out more at badcryptopodcast.com.
There you go, all those places. And it's nice for there to be people doing that kind of thing out there with crypto, which is one of the trends out there, and doing some real work to help people understand what it's even all about. So thank you again very much, Joel, for being today. Again, you mentioned all your webpage. It's Joel Comm with 2 M's, so that you don't jump into one of the fakers that is out there trying to be Joel Comm. Thank you very much for being today, for giving all that wonderful advice, all that experience that you've had. However, for now, and at least for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, Engagers, thank you for listening to Professor Game Podcast. And if you want more interviews with incredible guests like Joel Comm, then go to professorgame.com/subscribe and get started into our email list. That way we'll be in contact, and you'll be the first to know of any opportunities that Professor Game might have for you, and before you go on to your next mission. Would you like to know what does experiential learning and experience design have to do with gamification? Then subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. I will see you there.